It's hard to write that essay, it really is, because it's a page or a page and a half, and you know the three most common topics, or at least the three topics that are really important to high school students, or perhaps that have impacted their lives in the most profound way, would be death of a loved one or friend, moving, or divorce. And those are pretty heavy-duty topics, and there have been outstanding authors over the years who have tried to approach those topics and have had a difficult time in a 500-page book, and now we're asking a 17-year-old to reflect on that in 750 words or less. So it's a great challenge, so be careful.
I think that if you don't feel that you can trust the admissions officer to safeguard your secrets or to see you in a vulnerable light, you're going to miss an opportunity for the admissions officer to get to know you as well as he or she possibly could.
One of the biggest mistakes that students make on their application essays is to sort of make an embellished resume. So we've already seen your resume, we've already seen what you've done, what you're interested in. Don't use the very few words you have to tell us about yourself only to talk about what you do. I think the essay is sometimes thought of as a way to show yourself off, and in reality what it is for us is a way to understand why you do the things you do, how those things impact you, how those experiences have shaped your worldview.
One of my pet peeves when I read admissions essays is when students describe an event without explaining the significance of it. And so if you tell me, for example, about a snowstorm, okay, sure, but what does that tell me about you?
Last year I read an essay about a student, or that a student wrote about his grandfather, and it was very well written, lots of wonderful imagery and good punctuation and grammar. But by the end of the essay, I wanted to admit the student's grandfather because it was all about him. And so I didn't learn anything about the student in that essay. And so in that case, although it was a great essay, it was not great for this purpose.
Students who are creative will sometimes think that they should have a more visually appealing essay, and so they'll create their essay to be in the shape of something that represents who they are. It can be hard to read an essay that's shaped like a chalice, let's say. I've also seen students take the approach of a letter to a roommate, or their presidential acceptance speech that they're going to give down the road, thanking Georgetown for the opportunity. And I think sometimes the ploy can take over the essay, and you can't get past sort of the tool that they've used, and you don't actually get to the student. So I think it's better to write a simple, heartfelt essay than to try to put too much time into crafting something that you think will stand out or catch our attention.
I kind of understand where students are coming from when they say, let me mention all of these different things, but I try to encourage students to sort of hone in, maybe on one experience, on one extracurricular, and use that as a lens through which we can get to see the way that you think, the way that your world operates, and also who you might be on our campus.
Purposes of the application where we as admission officers are trying to get to know the applicant, that's a great essay. First and foremost, when looking at essay, we're going to be looking at things like their ability to write well and their preparation for college, but we're also using that information to kind of see things like their resilience and their love of learning and their intellectual curiosity.
I always tell a student, if you had the chance to come meet with the admissions committee and present yourself in person, would you want to do it? And without fail, students say, yeah, I'd love to have that opportunity. And when I ask why, they say because if they were able to get to know the admissions committee would want to admit them because they would know them and they would get to know what they're about and what makes them unique and special.
The essay is really neat in that it's one of the only places in the application where they have complete control, where they can write about the things that they've been involved in, the things that they've done.
One piece of advice I would give to every student is to ask someone who knows them a little bit to read their essay and to tell them what impressions they have of you after reading the essay.
I think the essays that work best are actually quite simple. I think students get really caught up in thinking that this essay has to encompass your entire life and it has to be groundbreaking and publishable quality. And that's a lot to ask of a high school student, so I always advise students to stick to the simple things that you know. And the essays that stand out the most in my mind are about simple things, very everyday topics.
I have seen some amazing essays about things like students walking their dog, or even their bus ride to school.
I think our hope is that if a student were to drop the essay on the floor of their high school and someone were to pick it up, it didn't have your name on it, that they'd say for sure, oh, I know that this is so-and-so's essay because it speaks so much about your voice and your experiences and your perspective.
I think my favorite essay that I've ever read came from a student in the Midwest, and he wrote about working at a fast food restaurant. And he wrote about how people were treating him as they went through the drive-thru and how he was treating them back. He called himself an undercover anthropologist, which admittedly was a little nerdy in a Brown sort of way, but I liked his essay because I was able to see what he was seeing and feel what he was feeling. So for the purposes of the application, where we as admission officers are trying to get to know the applicant, that's a great essay.